Okay, good evening. This is Michael Payne in the beautiful downtown Science Center of Short Pump, Virginia. We're very excited to have everybody here tonight because we just got back from San Diego at the third World Conference on NAD. And so we're excited to share those items with you that might be important to your life because this is the medicine of the future. We need to be able to talk about it, need to be able to move forward and understand how we can help people anywhere from anti-aging, which I don't love that word, but brain restoration. Brain restoration to addiction, what we're going to talk about tonight, has meaning. We're talking tonight, I've named our presentation for the next year, Beyond Genes and Germs, and how we need to go beyond the current thinking in order to heal the diseases of the 21st century. Now, I'd like for you to imagine with me one thing. If you could be anything you wanted to be and you could live another 50 years, or we're not really about living longer. We're about putting not years in your life, but life in your years. And so many people are suffering from so many diseases today. There obviously is something wrong. Well, you know, it takes 50 years for a good idea to become medicine. Frontier scientists tell me that information doubles every 2 years. And by definition, most medicines are obsolete by the time the ads are on TV. In fact, they're probably 20 generations behind. Now, we've struggled for years on our side of the business trying to understand what we really are. Some people want to say, well, he's an alternative practitioner. Well, he's a functional medicine practitioner. Well, you know, all those alternative guys do all that stuff. But in reality, we're translational scientists. Now, that is a new idea. Not really. Transitional science is a multidisciplinary form of science that bridges the recalcitrant gaps, and I love that word recalcitrant, that sometimes exists between fundamental science and applied science, necessitating something in between to translate knowledge into application. So we're about bringing real application to the world with science that exists right now, but you won't see it for another 50 years. Wow. Wouldn't it be nice to keep our brain better and healthier? Wouldn't it be nice not to fear Alzheimer's? Wouldn't it be nice not to fear MS and Parkinson's, that there are real solutions on an everyday basis? So here we go. We explored a lot of areas to come up with this, and we'll be talking about NAD mainly tonight. And we'll be talking about NAD and brain restoration, but look at what we had to go through to find this subject. Aaron and I have studied functional medicine, homotoxicology, microbiome, and epigenetics. Wow, that one's the new trend, but we used to call it leaky gut. Molecular nutrition, which is all new because now the language has changed there. It's not like, hey, the cell opens and closes, but you might have a heat shock protein that would generate a lipid bilayer channelopathy. So there you go. You got some big words there. Optogenetics, and some people are interested in optogenetics and about how light changes genes. That's a little technical for us. We like the word neurophotonics, which means light can change the way you feel, think, and do. Chronobiology, which is something maybe we all just take for granted. And when we take that for granted, we're talking about a chronobiological effect on our bodies from staying up too late, from being hit by cell phones, by, you just name it, screen time. And there is some discussion that Alzheimer's and ADD and all the stuff that you see that you're worried about in the news may actually be a disruption in chronobiology because we no longer release our own biochemistry. So we're dependent upon outside sources for our biochemistry to stay in sync. Strangely enough, chronobiology's main genetic component is called the clock gene. Now, they had to make that up for sure. We just went to this big conference, and here's the famous Australian man who has really helped us out a lot and understand what is happening. And his name is Ross Grant, and he's professor at the Sydney Medical School and CEO of Australian Research Institute. And he comes and does research for us as well. Mainly Dr. Medier down in the Springfield Institute. We now know that NAD IV goes into the cells and very little excretion happens. We can't find it in the urine, so it must actually be going into the tissue. What we figured out is that we're so deficient in NAD. By the time you're 65 years old, which that would be me, 65 years old, you may have lost 80% of your NAD. NAD is critical for every cell in your body. Dr. Grant presented at this conference telling us that there's minimal excretion. We did the pharmacological studies, and he presented demonstrating that when you do an IV, it stays. So the next piece, you know, these guys, these researcher guys always have strange names. Ross Grant, NAD Brady. I think that's kind of cool. Postdoctoral fellow at a Center for Brain and Aging. And we can see it. His studies are really around how NAD precursors and uptake through a particular pathway called the connexin 43. I would suggest that there are other pathways as well. We talked to to Jade Berg, master's, PhD, you name it. Lots and lots of wonderment here. Eat more vegetables, exercise, sleep, and reduce inflammation. Well, for my folks with Lyme disease, that's not even possible. But on the flip side of that, if you want to have a lifestyle that protects your brain, these are some of the things that we do have to do. So, and this is the master of the whole thing in the United States, 15 years, but he's mainly focused on the NAD molecule. He loves the NAD molecule, and the key point in this is that it improves cognitive function with NAD. So this is brain restoration, and brain restoration. So, and the last person is his research, Dr. James Watson, stem cell research at Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center. Well, boy, that's an anomaly, isn't it? Hollywood Presbyterians. So, key point is NAD plus restores the brain, and he's done great research with that, and you'll be hearing about them and maybe even from some of them over the next 6 months. These two people are pretty amazing. They're really all about how to take care of the person. If you're in the addiction business, or if you had a need to help with addiction, NAD will take cravings away for most things, alcohol, opiates, those type of things. But there has to be some type of follow-up, and we are currently working with several people associated with my old alma mater here called MCVVCU. I still call it MCV, Medical College of Virginia. And if you're going to put somebody through this kind of detox program as an addict, you really do and need follow-up and contact and boosting. But it will take the cravings away within 10 days. And these folks have the most experience at watching and witnessing that. And then there was some guy out there that just kept running around and saying, we need to take this to the next step. So, I didn't want to miss this guy. He was really the old master. And he's the one that talked about the clock gene and NAD. When I do NAD, I don't sleep more than 6 hours, but the sleep that I get is unbelievable. A deficiency of NAD plus, his basic thing after 30 minutes was you end up in zombie-like behavior. And it's strange that you would say that. For the past several years, we've been seeing young people show up and it's no longer ADD, it's just nothing. It's a zombie-like behavior. It's a disconnection disease. So, we find NAD at the crossroads of many things, because without cell health, there is no health. Now, I don't really have a slide for this. I want to give a lot of credit to somebody I started in this business with, was Mary Megson. And Mary Megson did a great job in 1999 understanding the G-coupled proteins, meaning the guardian of the cells. The guardian of the cells are defected. And when you get a double defect, by inserting a poison into your body, the cells become, well, shall we say, dysregulated. And that is called a calcium channelopathy. And here it is again, 15 years later. We always said we kind of look like autistic children ourselves because this calcium channelopathy in them just gets destroyed kind of quickly. But with us older folks and you younger folks, it is happens slowly. And without cell health, without NAD plus, some type of program, we cannot restore that calcium channelopathy. Well, you know, a lot of people on our side want to say, hey, you know, guys, we really, really want to get all the way into the real cause. You want the real cause? Here it is, calcium channelopathy. Your cells do not open at the right time. If there is excess calcium in the blood, you're firing too hard. We have products, VascuClear, Niacel, a number of those products that will actually clear that bad firing and restore the calcium channel. So we're very excited to continue to talk and tell you about these, and we may take some questions very shortly. Tara will join us tomorrow night. And another thing that I want you to know is, that Hyla Cass has agreed to join us, who is if you want to look her up, is just a good long-term solid position in psychobiology, basically. And we're going to love that conversation as well. So as we continue down the path, we see this microbiota versus gut-brain axis. I think every one of you know that the gut talks to the brain and vice versa. So I'm not really sure if it's gut-brain connection or brain-gut connection, but I know that you cannot ignore it. Now, we've been talking a long time about leaky gut, but now that it's in the medical field, we've got to talk about the microbiota and the microbiome imbalances. So those are the new words, and you'll hear those. It's the same thing, but they're getting more scientific about what it does. Well, I'm at the point I really just want to feel better. I don't really want to know all this stuff sometimes. But when you start to look at it, it is true. I've got people in here today. They're just amazing. They're amazing. I can't tell you much about them except well, she has a gut issue. She's 12 years old, and that gut issue turned into a liver and gallbladder issue, and we have been busy in the process of reversing it. And today we saw some of our first success after 3 solid years, 9 years old to 12 years old, been in pain ever since. So it does mean something to talk about the gut, but that gut firing is not always in the gut. You can see it might even be in the brain, and it's called the gut-brain axis. And it does affect the way our nutrients uptake, our immune intolerance and food tolerances, defense against, and we see a lot of infection, especially parasitic infections that allopathic medicine doesn't really talk about much, but they're starting to. And it affects the signaling to the brain of dopamine and serotonin. So you can see how somebody loses their ability to have good mood regulation, prevention of infection. So when they lose this in the gut and the gut-brain axis, they start down the road of chronic disease. Now, it's really important. The gut-brain axis affects serotonin, but it also affects dopamine. Also affects the thyroid, so gut-brain communication when it is infective. But you can see some very key areas: serotonin, cytokines, something called vagus nerve, and microbial metabolites. Now that's a real interesting topic, even in our office, because if you've never seen Cyrex Laboratories arrays, we can actually measure how microbial metabolites are cross-reacting and creating an autoimmune environment in your intestine. When the intestine goes autoimmune, you have leaky gut, then you have leaky veins, and then you get leaky brains. Time to stop that noise. It's just time to stop it. We need a better understanding. And that is not Sally Fields or somebody else selling you yogurt on TV. Serotonin is driven by this gut-brain axis, immune cytokines. So when the immune system starts to waver. So that's why we call this, what we do, neuroimmune dysfunction syndrome. Michael Goldberg coined that phrase in the 90s, and we saw this, that most diseases aren't necessarily that big bad name that you hear. They have an underlying neuroimmune response. It affects the vagus nerve, and then the bacterial molecules become upside down, let's say. Bacterial molecules leave waste. I call it toxic metabolic waste. And it affects your GABA receptors, your tryptophan. Especially in addicts, we see GABA receptors very destroyed. Especially in addicts, we see tryptophan under produced because it gives you a sense of well-being. Sometimes it's overproduced and you can be very angry. These microbiomes, one of the great statements recently is we are no longer what we eat, we are whom we feed, is a better way to think about it. And every time we challenge, there are people who are getting more and more mindful about what kind of antibiotics and such that we will use in the future. Food particles, well, poor Annie today, I mean, she's allergic to every one of her favorite foods. And that's because we have leaky gut syndrome. And so leaky gut may underpin the chronic low-grade inflammation observed in anxiety and depression. When I first started in functional medicine 15 years ago, all we talked about was giving hydrochloric acid and some magnesium. Well, some days that's what we're back to. So there you go. That's the gut-brain axis, and it's determined by low stomach acid, leaky gut, food particles, and the balance of the microbiome. And so we are no longer what we eat, we are whom we feed, and the microbiome is you and about 100 trillion of your closest friends. So we need to keep them happy. There's a thing called the enteric nervous system, and excuse me, and that enteric nervous system is signaling to the brain at all times. It's how we know when somebody's sneaking up on us. It gives us that chill up our spine. It gives us the sense of footprints or the being of some danger, so we won't go that place. So this is Michael Gershon. He was at the first place I ever went, which was the functional medicine meeting number 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know. It was way back there. And he wrote a book called The Gut is the Second Brain. So when we see this horrific increase in ADD, PANDAS, autism, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, and even Alzheimer's, if we were in an investment curve, and back in the days when I used to do investment work, this is called a J curve. This cannot happen. This cannot happen in nature. A J curve is parabolic, metabolic, I don't know what it is, but it's bolic. And so at some point, this cannot be explained by, oh, it's just better reporting. There is something that is affecting our brain, and it is because we're disorganized in our energy. And secondly, we don't have enough NAD. So the crux of most of our practice this day, we've seen 6,000 cases, 20,000 sessions, 20 different countries. So these are some of our guys that we really enjoy, and they've been very kind to us, and we've been very kind to them. You can see my son Aaron, actually, what a great guy. He is truly a kid whisperer. So in our world now, when I was at this meeting, all they say is, well, where's your data? Where's your data? Well, I have 6,000 people. All you got is rats. So when an M changes to a P, you're happy? I'm happy when Annie's gallbladder starts to function again and she smiles a lot more. So not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Excuse me. Now here's an interesting factor, and I hope everyone can hear, because I'm looking, I don't think we dialed in on this on the phone. So, but this is if you can imagine that we now, if technology, if you had available to you all the technology in that is out there that's being delayed 50 years, this is actually a picture of a brain. And we now can see all the way down into the firing fibers of the brain. This is actually called a Tesla scan. Now, I know where the molecules are and everything and how the colors light up. This is what we're still looking at over here. It's kind of like watching the Lucy show or a Ted Turner broadcast where they colorized it. But here is a interesting way of looking at the brain actually by energetic means, and it's called a Tesla. I think this is a Tesla 3. But they've actually got a Tesla 10 in certain places, and they now can see molecules of NAD actually moving through your brain. So we are at this point taking this, and here's what we're learning about our technology. You should know this. When our IV patients get into this cube, their cells become more organized and their IVs go so much better. So they don't last as long because the body's becoming organized and taking up information. We are so disorganized at the cellular level. Quantum rhythms, I'm sorry, not quantum rhythms. Yeah, maybe quantum rhythms, but circadian is just the tip of the iceberg. There's something called ultradian rhythms, and they happen every 90 and 20 minutes. And if you're unaware of them, a lot of mystical people understand this, but you know, trying to get from your job every morning and trying to cook dinner at night, we don't remember. So this is our cubette and a pair of ugly pants, but this is how we reorganize energy in a person's body. Again, the wavelength of this qubit is actually helps NAD manage and regulate the cells. This is our new high intensity LED that we're getting great responses from. And we have spine pads, neck pads, and other wonderful pads that actually pierce, you know, into the cell and revitalize it. Now, here's how it revitalizes it. It makes the enzyme systems, especially the capsase enzymes, restart. Without light, there's probably no cell health. So we do some rat studies. Some people do. But I kind of felt sorry for the rats. So I took it on myself. So I'm the big rat in this study, and the 500 people that come here to listen to what we do year in, year out. So the whole idea is that we need 21st century solutions for 21st century medicine, and we're so far behind, just like everything else. We've been hiding out for so long, and we need to have a better situation for all of us so that our brains will operate. Your brain, you can live, what is it, 3 minutes without, you can only live 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, you know, that kind of story, 30 days without food. You know, our brain is really important and we don't know much about it. So 21st century solutions for a 21st century practice. We actually need to go back to the future to make that work. Okay, Aaron, I don't know if you're on here, but I'm willing to take some questions.
Okay, if you have questions, please write them in the question tab on the GoToWebinar dashboard. And we can answer them as we go. No questions right now, so you can keep on going.
Okay.
Oh, actually, we got one. Kelsey, is this about EMFs and power lines and how it can affect your NAD production, or?
Aaron, you could let her on if you can do that with this software.
I think I can.
Just let her ask it.
Right, Kelsey, I'm going to unmute you right now so you can ask the question to Mike. Can you hear us, Kelsey?
Hey, Mike, I'm here. Hey, Aaron, how's it going? Yeah, Aaron, I was actually asking this question earlier with you, kind of just like living closer to power lines, and what are some like the implications and ramifications behind that? And if you're in a position where you don't have a choice, what would you propose to do about that?
Well, you're exactly right. The power, and it's the old power lines, but it's also the new 5G technologies are disorganizing the exchange between extracellular and intracellular calcium, which is modulated by NAD plus. So what we would do about it is you know, there are a couple strange things. A biomat helps offset some of that. If you did an exercise with a biomat or a PEMF, it reshifts your body. There's a company called Energy Tools that we work with, and there's another one that has patches that actually deflect the EMFs, and we wear them on our bodies, and we have home actually home diffusers of the biofield. So
Grounding mask too.
yeah, grounding mask. And so there's many things you can do. And 10 years ago when people started presenting this to me, I really, it all seems so odd at the time, but now it's everyday life. I mean, we just looked at a new place to go to that could get bigger because we're busting at the seams. And we looked at it, and there's a cell phone tower in the backyard of this thing, and it used to be a daycare center. And so there's just no way. Both of the places we looked at that were so good had cell phone towers like the big ones in the middle of a forest right behind the places we looked. There's no way we can put people in that kind of field. So it made decisions for us. But what you can do personally, things like Q-Link, but Energy Tools actually have some deflectors and actually enhance water. And by the way, I forgot to tell you, our homeopathic remedies that we have created called the T5 remedies, each one of them is imprinted with a deflector for EMFs. So you can also treat it homeopathically, especially if you believe it's affecting your family. Did that help you, Kelsey?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. I actually have a grounding mat in like one of those patches. So not sure how effective it is, but if you would like to provide some links where I can kind of check out some other solutions that you have, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm gonna look them up and send them out.
Here. Okay. Look them up and send them out, Aaron. But it's Energy Tools, but our own EMF remedies made by Michael. What's Mike's last name up there? I can't think. I haven't talked to him this year. But by Homodynamics, we have homeopathic remedies melt in your mouth and not in your hand, and they deflect the EMFs.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
All right. The next question is from a. Let's see. I'm going to butcher this. I'm sorry, but Gayadit.
You can put them on the phone and let them say it themselves.
The attendee. They have to. They can't unmute it, but they have a question. Is NR supplementation orally at least effective? What about NMN is better as a powder, or does it need to be IV'd? NAD need to be IV'd? Well,
somebody has really read a lot of deep science on this, and the answer, and that's what we were all talking about. I think that is still effective, and we're looking for ways for a better delivery and rapidly dissolving tablets, which is being brought by a production arm of Archway Pharmacy. It's a rapidly dissolving tablet with biotin for MS patients. And so the answer is, we love the idea of NAD+, and that's the camp I grew up in. But when you go to David Sinclair and Chromadex and people like that, they have the opinion that you have with the NMN, and I think it works as well. I think there's enough science behind it, but in addiction, in Parkinson's, in I've even seen it in early dementia, the IV might be the only way to go because of the absorption rate in the intestine. But
yeah,
I agree.
Over and over again at the NAD conference that IV is king, and then you step down there from patches to creams to tablets, and the absorption rate goes down because of different like if you're chronically ill, you have a hard time digesting things anyway. So it's that could be another issue.
So we're looking at all kinds of ways. We've used Pratt gels, and I'm having a great experience doing mine with cream with a little bit of low dose naltrexone. We did them by patches a lot, but the patches sometimes disrupt the skin. New people in our group are doing it by nebulizing and orally. I believe that the Niacel and the NR is good, but it's just not the same as the IV. So you will get an effect. So I'm not trashing it at all. Okay.
All right. Are there? I'm going to unmute. Hey, Melinda, I'm going to unmute you, and you can ask your question to Mike. Can you hear us, Melinda? Melinda?
Guess
Okay.
not.
Well, her question was, are there genetic tests to verify genetic vulnerability to NAD energy deficiencies? Are practitioners finding lab tests of lactate and pyruvate levels and ratios helpful in directing the treatment? What supplements optimize neurological energy improvement while receiving NAD IVs? Could NAD cause loose stools? Yeah,
Okay, a lot of questions there, and she was absolutely right. And that I was doing some research on a cancer case and some other neurologicals, and all of those markers in a couple of my cases were high, the lactate. And so the answer is we watched it come down as we applied, and it's about the NAD plus to NAD H ratio. We get pseudo hypoxic when the NAD rate gets higher than the NAD plus. We seem to be starving for NAD plus and we may not have the enzyme to convert it. I think the research is still out on that. If you go to Dr. Medier, you know, he is a hardcore data guy, and he wants that data. I don't know that every time we have this discussion, I don't know that we have a direct path. We're all struggling with it, but I think what you mentioned in those two markers is excellent. You know, both of those markers would give us ideas whether the NAD, because they're directly part of the pathway, but it may not be the whole picture. Does it cause loose stools, Aaron? Have we seen on our phone calls and when people leave the clinic and stuff like that?
No, but it could be a detox reaction.
Yeah.
That's my only guess on that. And like supplements to optimize during this for neurological recovery. There's some oxygen tablets like the H2. They're hydrogen tablets. I mean, from Research Nutritionals. I really like the Mitosynergy to really help get your brain back online and
support the mitochondria function right along with the NAD.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And also like stuff with like cuperzine A in it to help with the acetylcholine production in the brain. To help with depression and other things. And Neo 40 would also be a good one.
Right. I agree with every bit of that. So nothing else that we can say. We are looking at supplements actually from back in the old days with carnosine and DMAE and acetyl L-carnitine during this process, as opposed to IVing the PC right now. So we're taking that orally if there is good digestion.
Okay. And how often should someone get an IV treatment or an NAD treatment over the age of 60?
Well, if sometimes, well, it just depends. You know how you've seen one person, and so, but in general, a booster maybe once a month, maybe every 3 months, but it's a good idea to go through what we might call an intensive, then a booster every other month, about every 60 days. There are in between steps if you can give yourself a sub-Q of 25 milligrams. That is an interesting way to do it. So between shots, between the IV, our booster program that we designed, which I think, you know, we're kind of leading the way in that. Our booster program, we have creams, again, prescription. We have patches, prescription, and also the new one, which would be a little less intense, but called myotin.com. And you'd have to have a code to enter that one if you guys go into that one from us. And that code, I can go ahead and give you that code. It's not, we're no longer in study with it, but it's LW1791. And so you can actually purchase that as a dissolvable tablet. So we like a lot of NAD going in, NAD plus mainly. So unfortunately, NAD plus has been very expensive. We're making moves right now to buy 100, like a lot of it. So we can maybe bring the price down a little bit. But it is extremely, it has been extremely expensive by IV, but the tablets are pretty good and the follow-up and the booster. So if you're 60, maybe 3 times a year, but it might behoove you, meaning, you know, it might be important to you to have a 5-day intensive at some point.
Okay, that's all the questions for right now. So let's continue on with the webinar, Mike.
Okay, well, you know, we want to go ahead and tell you that, you know, that this in March, we're going right along with the basketball season. We'll call it March Madness, and that you need to get out there and actually book your appointment. We're gonna, you know, I've updated some of the inquiries that I can make with the Zyto. We love the Zyto, and it's been so wonderful to match these expensive blood tests. We used to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on tests, but today we can ask most of those questions. So if you want to ask the higher question, you can get a higher answer. So we see what it wants, and these are some of the things that we, you know, sometimes look at. In this person, we could see H. pylori, and that was an interesting case. The H. pylori in several cases lately have inflamed the I think it's called a peritoneum, but systemic inflammation from H. pylori that's now out of the stomach, causing a C-reactive protein at 48. We've been able to bring C-reactive proteins from 48 back to 3 just with a special product called VascuClear. But the most important thing, if you want an easy entry point in why energy medicine, where energy gets disturbed, at the very first part, you ought to see and experience our oil pulling therapy process. And I get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I take Perk vitamin C and I put a teaspoon in a glass and I swish and swish and switch my vitamin C, and then I drink what's left. I swish and spit, then I brush my teeth, I spray my nose with saline solution with essential oils, and then sometimes I gargle with you know, a medical mouthwash, or sometimes I just use a tiny bit of diluted hydrogen peroxide. But almost all sickness starts in the nose, in the nasal cavities and the dental cavitations. If you have all that going on, we have ways. And I even have one called Dental Tox from Physica that we use in the middle of that as well. So very helpful, because so if none of you are keeping up with the way I talk, but today what I want to tell you is I just saw something at Christmas time. All that creates a fire, and this, your brain looks like crab dip in a chafing dish at Christmas time, because there's a little fire right up underneath it. It's keeping it just slightly warm enough so you can enjoy life, but then it doesn't. So can't get all the job done. So what we see in most people is root canal materials hanging out there. It fires up the brain stem and then puts them under a great deal of stress. So if you want to know the cause of your issue and how to treat it, now is the time to sign up, because March Madness Aaron will have an announcement about it next week. So I want to take it a little further. We'll take it a little deeper. Calcium channelopathy.
Real quick,
yes, sir.
Can you spell the myotin for us?
What's that?
Can you spell myotin? The NAD.
MYETIN.com. Myotin.com. MYE. So at the key of everything, the cells just stop working, and we have cross-reactivity and not cross-reactivity, long dormant periods of nobody talking to each other. Sounds like a dinner table with 6 cell phones at it. So the channelopathies may manifest multiple diseases depending on tissue specificity. Lots of big words for, hey, you know, it affects everybody different, but it turns off my electric. And the reason I got interested in this, and I just had, it's been the most amazing time. A number of families from the Amish community have decided that this is a good place for them to come. And they've been easy because they are, shall we say, a little more not of the world, in the world, but not of the world sometimes. We've been able to see really clear pictures of what it's like for somebody to fall into sickness by interacting with the modern world. So one of my guys, who's about 45, had this sickness, and it seemed like he had something called malignant hypothermia. but it had to do with a lot of excess calcium in his body, as well as he was infected by his own IV. So we provided him with a way to clean his IV daily with hydrogen peroxide and got him on a better TPN, and now he's eating and out of the hospital for the first time in 3 years. So what we see is this molecular, we see it in heart disease, we see it in all kinds, but these channels, and heart's easier to read because they have actually do that 64 slice thing where they, or it's got a bigger name now, but they basically take a picture of your heart and give you a calcium score. Guess what? Same thing happens in your brain. So extracellular NAD regulates intracellular calcium. Calcium, calcium, calcium. It's the bad calcium. It's not necessarily taking calcium. It's the bad calcium because all of us are so acidic. And when that bad calcium is laying in excess along the cell gradient out here, it changes the electrical grid and the doors don't open and close to let us have oxygen, nutrients, and get rid of our waste. Because we are 99% physics, the doors are closed and the electrical change on the door, the electrical locks can't be opened. So we have all seen these. Ammonia aldehydes and metabolic waste inhibit redox. These are the big words that I used while I was out there. Electromagnetic pollution, we've already talked about that. But not only that, environmental toxins, especially glyphosates and bisphenol A, are super dangerous to cell function. And pathogens, of course. Some of the pathogens today are not really recognizable. We see things every day we don't really quite understand, but we know what category they're in. So, and then of course there are other interventions sometimes that alter your biology. So what we see here is the brain no longer communicating in the right rhythms. And this is called the default mode network. It doesn't operate on chemistry and 1959 AT&T wires. It's pulsing, texting, Instagramming all the way through there all the time, and it's out of sync. One of the routers is down. We could call the diseases of the 21st century a disconnection disease. We are disconnected because we don't have the power for our bodies to tweet from one side to the other sometimes. Disconnection disease, the router is down. So I was talking earlier that ultradian rhythms are really the key. Every 90 minutes, 20 minutes. Do you think you're really getting dinged so often these days? The body can't tell 20 minutes from 90 minutes. And of course, we all know this one, but what happens in this one is once this is a couple of layers. So we got all these famous people, including when we worked with Amy Yasko years ago, but it wasn't enough answer in just talking about methylation genetics. But they do become important at some point. But at this moment, it is important to know that when the lights don't come on, this doesn't matter. So mitochondrial stress causes oxidative stress. It starves it for oxygen. Metabolic waste gets up there and you start actually leaking light. And you cannot remember what it was like to be well. You do not have access to your own healing blueprint. This is a picture of when we become hypoxic. You can see this is a normal brain, and this is a brain looking for oxygen. Increased oxygen uptake. What creates oxygen? NAD. NAD creates NADH being inverted against NAD plus creates pseudohypoxia and starves the brain. Now, this is our recovery program, and we started this in 2011. Started to say 1911. Seems like 100 years ago. We're like everybody else. You need a whole food type therapy, and we're now following Dr. Gundry a little bit more and understanding that ligands actually have other damages, so the food list becomes more narrow. You have to have a natural detoxification process, methylation and liver cleanse. Targeted nutrition would be IVs now, no longer trying to do other things, but the IVs. And we really need to tell you, we're not just an NAD center. We're starting to be recognized for the work that we're doing with metabolic issues, with immune issues, and with, with the NAD. So you combine those three together, it really offers you an opportunity to get the best medicine in the country at this time. Our real key that we love to take that good medicine and turn it back on. We've been working since 2011, Aaron. I can't believe that. Bioenergetic Reset by Pulse Laser. Now, here's a kind of interesting thing that everybody should know. The drug companies are looking at how to activate photosynthesis pharmaceutical agents by something called triboluminescence. So basically, we put all this good stuff in your body, and we either treat you before and after, or sometimes during, to help the uptake of the nutrients to come into your body. And that's in applied physics letters. So see, these are the people that we have helped along the way, and kids, of course, we love kids, and then Lyme patients, and this young lady was having a lot of problems with her gallbladder as well, and this one, I don't even remember him. We use all kinds of, this one's for the brain, and we're working with Denise. What's Denise's last name, Aaron?
Hetrick with Clear Mind Center.
Clear Mind Center, and we're working directly with her on some new ways to stimulate that default mode network in your brain is with more like a helmet device as well.
Advanced neurofeedback.
What's that, son?
Using advanced neurofeedback.
Using advanced neurofeedback, but it's also called photoactivated because it uses red light to stimulate that brain. If you want to make any more comments, right here's the place to do it, Aaron.
Yeah, real quick, for those who don't know what neurofeedback is, it is it's like a defragment for the brain. So we come up with a protocol by mapping the brain wave patterns, finding out where their deficiencies are, and then working out the brain to fix a lot of underlying issues, because it measures the alpha, the beta, the gamma, the delta. And a lot of times where a lot of problems come from, since our brain is our motherboard, and it's sending out all the information all over our body, we need to make sure we're telling the right story or tuned into the right radio station. So what neurofeedback will do is defragment the brain so that we can turn into that right radio station, and we're sending the right information all over our body by using a reward system or binaural beats and certain flickers of photosonic light. And it helps. It's 90% effective in anxiety and depression, ADD, ADHD. It's helped a lot in PTSD cases. It's actually endorsed by the Pediatric Association of America for ADD treatment. Mm-hmm. So it's a really powerful tool.
And especially, go ahead, son. But especially when we combine it with NAD, we're starting to see really interesting results. Go ahead.
And there's two different ways. There is an at-home system that you can do, and that's what's featured on the screen. And it's still really powerful. Or there's a more robust system that you have to actually come into the office to do.
And you map their brain, don't you?
You map the brain, and it comes up with it's an EEG, and we measure the brainwave activity in different parts of the brain, and then we come up with a protocol to properly work out those areas to fix the underlying causes of lots of different neurological issues.
This was a Guillain-Barré, or a Lyme tick bite, and it was not supposed to be fixed for a year. And she was one of the first people I gave the NAD to, so it helped reset her nervous system and get this neurological inflammation out of her body. This is a man who drives, former GM executive who drives from New York to do the lights and the NAD. And then there's some things you just can't fix. Okay, ba-boom, boom. So emphasis on light is coming, and the pharmaceutical researchers already know it. And the strange thing that they use is vitamin B2, and what else did they use? Photosynthesis and wintergreen. So they use wintergreen and vitamin B2 to make their medicines work better. So here is our lobby, and here is our IV room. And that's about all you need to know. We have hyperbaric Tesla lights, And the one thing you need to know is we're going to go back to the future to grab this because the solutions are there. And it's just like Marty right here at the end. You may not have understood a lot of this tonight, but your children are really going to love it. So it's time for you all to come back to the future with us and find out new things. It's time to ask the questions and get better at what we do. Thank you so much. Aaron Payne, any more questions? You'll have to take them.
Sure, we have that was Dr. Bopola, Kelsey. He and Dr. Pompa came for a visit here last summer. Yeah, it was a pretty cool day or two. Let's see. Does anybody else have any questions right now? This is the time to ask. And for those of you who need to know, our phone number here at the office is 804-562-8554. I'll also be sending that out in a link. And we'll also be posting this webinar on our YouTube channel, and I'll send out an email to make sure you all can see it. And we have a lot of other great webinars posted there right now on many different things. We are also going to continue this webinar tomorrow night with Tara Smith. She is the research and development person for the NAD Center out in San Diego. They've been a treatment center. They've been open for several years, and she's going to put on a great webinar tomorrow night going into a little bit more in depth about NAD and how it works. So it will be recorded if you can't make it tomorrow night, but we hope you can. And if there are no more questions, we can wrap this up.
Okay. One last question. Come on, Melinda, you've got one more in there.
All right. Well, I hope you all can join us tomorrow, the same time, same place, and it'll be the same login as you used tonight. And tomorrow night we'll be with Tara, and Mike will be talking about all the great things NAD can do. It's a wonderful tool, or it's a wonderful molecule. I did a week's worth, and it really did change a lot for me. It's been a great thing to help with energy and clarity. So if you guys are interested in it, please don't hesitate to call us. Again, our phone number is 804-562-8554. And you can also find us on the web at lwtinternational.com. So I hope you all have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.